Hello, hello, good day, good evening, good morning, whenever you're catching this. Hello, beautiful stars. I am Courtney, host of Stars in the Morning Light, and you are here for Edgar Cayce Life Skills Studies. We are in Edgar's bio again, and yes, it has been a moment since we've been in his bio. So, here on Wednesdays, at some time on a Wednesday, usually every other Wednesday, starting the summer of 2025, we are usually in either his bio or one of his source materials. There are tons of videos in the Edgar Cayce playlist. The link is in the description. So you can catch up with one of his source materials as we are in Edgar Cayce on reincarnation, and or we are taking a deep dive into his biography, The American Prophet, right? The American Prophet by Kirkpatrick. So when we're doing his bio, when I say deep dive, this is not going to be just a quick overview of, birth, life, death of Edgar Cayce. We're talking about the sleeping prophet and bringing humanity back into he was also just a man. Not just to highlight that and the struggles with having a gift or the blessings with having a gift, but also in relation to him, can you start to notice some correlation within your own life? Many people are going to be waking up to advanced spiritual gifts. So, throughout all of the playlist, throughout all of the videos, live and otherwise, it is for you to start asking yourself questions, start noticing things. How do you relate? And if you do relate, how do you live through them? I see that Jackie J came through the chat. Good to see you, my dear. Today, I will try to say hello to those who are kind of coming in the chat slowly at the beginning and towards the end, because I really want to get into this biography. Where we left off. I'm just going to paraphrase real quick, and then I'm going to jump into where we were or where we are. He is back in Kentucky, Christian County, Hopkinsville. His son has been born. He kind of was trying to still live under the radar, though, a little bit, but Ketchum. Remember Dr. Ketchum that he met down in, I believe, when he was in Alabama. I'm trying to refresh everybody's memories. If you are new here, welcome. If you feel like you're a little bit out of the mix, that's why I'm catching everybody up. There's the playlist. Please go utilize it. So Edgar got married to Gertrude. A bunch of stuff happened. He then went down to Alabama, Mississippi, Texas. He was kind of bouncing around the South, trying to find himself, trying to sort it out. He thought he lost his gifts. As he's kind of getting settled as a traveling school photographer, because that's his true talent of 3D, what he loved creating, beautiful photographer. He finds himself, he's working, he's doing okay. Gertrude and his baby Hugh are living in the hill back in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. That's the name of the house, the hill. I love it when that happens. Well, then he meets a doctor, Dr. Ketchum. Dr. Ketchum's so impressed, and all of a sudden, Edgar gets his gifts back. As in, he starts accessing the Akashic records again, based out of he can save someone. And at this time, Ketchum performs the first implant surgery we've ever seen in life. A fellow, I think it was a politician or a fellow doctor in the area, had a horrible a knee accident or something was wrong with his knee. Very heavy set man. Something was wrong with his knee, and all of them were saying, well, we got to amputate that leg. We just got to get rid of it. Ketchum did a reading with Cayce, convincing Cayce you can do this. This is to save a life, to save a leg. And in that reading, Edgar was talking about, well, you got to take a big old, like, screw, and he called it a railroad screw, not railroad tie, but railroad screw. So a big old screw. Take a big old screw and put it in the center of the kneecap. They had never done anything like that before, and it was successful. So Ketchum, like, latched on to to Cayce. There's a whole lot more that happened. Please go back and listen. Well, now Edgar went back to Kentucky to be with his wife and child, Hugh, little baby Hugh. Ketchum followed and was like, we got to do something with this. Over time, a hotel owner, big time businessman in Kentucky, in Hopkinsville, got together with Ketchum. So we got a doctor and we got a hotel owner. They convinced Cayce to go into business. So the three of them. So when people came into town to get a reading from Cayce, they can stay at the hotel, and Dr. Ketchum can do whatever is needed doctor-wise, surgery, cures, medicine, what have you. So we are in that right now, as in they're building this like mini kind of empire inside of Hopkinsville. It's fascinating. Well, where we left off last time is that Ketchum and Leslie, Edgar's father, as we say, we talked a lot about who Leslie is in earlier videos, but who Edgar sees as his father. Leslie and Ketchum and Edgar go to Chicago, from Kentucky to Chicago, so more doctors and businessmen can meet Cayce. Well, when they got there, it was kind of all set up in a very particular ruse, in a way, to try to, how would I say? They orchestrated a lot of things to keep Cayce from doing it the way Cayce does things. And based out of their control, based on them not allowing certain elements to be in place, it did not go well. And then a reporter got a hold of all this and plugged it all over Chicagoland. I will quote. This was one of the titles on the Chicago Examiner. He came, we saw, but he did not conquer. And it was because they were kind of putting the brakes on how Cayce operates. Once again, trying to defame him, try to discredit him, going all around Chicagoland. And back then, this is the turn of the century. So if news traveled through the big cities, it does eventually get out to the smaller communities in different states even. So Chicago is spreading word. It was going to eventually get back to Kentucky. And that is where we left off, beloveds, last time. Please, once again, utilize the playlist. His biography, we go slowly to watch the evolution of this man and how his gifts would change and his life would change and his acceptance would change. And we are going to read very subtly one of the biggest changes for Edgar Cayce today. I see that Lori came in the chat. Good to see you, my dear. So welcome everybody to Stars of the Morning Light. I am Courtney, the host. If you are new here, welcome. We are a great community. I am usually live, and soon enough, I want to remind everybody that Lucky Stone 888 and I actually starting this Saturday, and probably all of the remaining Saturdays of May 2025, we are going to be discussing how Lucky and I, who are now hosts of Esoteric Tea on Saturday night, came together as friends through what is called an egregore project. Now, I bring that up even now because once again, Edgar is going to possibly be under a bit more scrutiny again, but because at the same time, others were being held under scrutiny during the spiritualist movement. Remember, folks, I am trying to bring 100 years forward. Where are we now with things? So, Edgar gets back from Chicago. And of course, Ketchum, no, the hotel owner, Casey, and Casey's dad are all trying to like figure out how do we handle what's being spread around Chicago. You guys want to know a little fun fact about Chicago? I'm from Chicagoland, so I can tell it. It's called the Windy City, not because of the wind. I mean, the wind is an issue. Trust me, the wind there can blow you away. Not because of that, but because some news reporter from California came to the Windy City really around this time as well. It was the 1920s or so, early early 1900s. Yeah, between 1910 and 25 or so, a Chicago or a California reporter came to Chicago to cover a big story. And that beloved reporter, no matter what dive he went into, bar, restaurant, it could even have been like an elite country club. It did not matter. Whoever he tried to speak to about this big news story, he kept getting the runaround. Nobody really gave him enough information to do anything with. And so when he got back to California, he wrote his big news article and he called it News from the Windy City. And from that, Chicago became known as the Windy City, as in, you're never going to get the truth out of anyone. It could be all different forms of walks of life. You are not going to get the truth. And while they're not giving you the truth, they're probably going to try to sell you something. That's what his whole news article was I went here, then I went there, then I went here. I spoke to all these people. I never got the facts. And they always were trying to sell me something. Still true to this day, folks. So, little fun fact. So, imagine that. Pretty much the same time as that article is being written, it's going around Chicago that this guy, Edgar, he ain't legit. He's not good enough. Mm. So, Edgar comes back. And this is where we left off, folks. Edgar comes back home. Baby Hugh is actually about 3 years old now. He's back home in Kentucky. All of those gentlemen, his dad, his 2 other business partners, are trying to salvage the downfall. He's not really paying attention to what's going on at home. At this time, Gertrude gives birth to a second child. And they name that beautiful child Milton Porter. Milton Porter. Very kind of common name in many ways. We might hear that in old black and white movies. Milton Porter was born March 28th, 1911. And same as Hugh, because Hugh was a sick baby too, but they figured out pretty early he was not getting the nutrients from his mother's milk. Same was going on with Milton. Took a little while for others to pay attention enough. Gertrude was becoming extremely sick, extremely sick. The baby's becoming extremely sick. It's very tragic. I will tell you, in my own family, and I'm sure I can share this. I have an older sister. She was born premature. She was 4 pounds, 11 ounces when born, and she was allergic to my mother's milk. And within 4 days or so, she is on death's door. Actually, both of them were. So luckily, both of them are still alive. It is actually a very serious thing when a baby is allergic to the mother's milk. And I'm expressing this because there might be audience members that don't know that kind of thing. It is a very serious matter, especially because the mother also usually is going on through some kind of sickness as well. It's a big sign of it. And Gertrude was. She was still bleeding from giving birth. She ended up getting sick. There are reasons why. By the time Cayce paid attention and Gertrude probably notified him, um, Cayce did do a reading for Milton Porter, his child, but it was too late. And Milton Porter died May 17th. So born late March, passed away by May 17th. Well, even with that, he's looking upon Gertrude as she is looking sickly because she just lost a child. But at least this gets him focusing at home. Little baby Hugh, a 3-year-old, thought that it was his fault that his younger brother died. A 3-year-old. Because he overheard his mom say to someone else, a sister, an aunt, well, little Milton probably got sick because Hugh had whooping cough as well at the time of his birth. They're just talking, they're just trying to sort out what was going on. Hugh, as a 3-year-old, heard that. At 3 years old is the first time Edgar had a heart-to-heart moment with his son. Hugh tried to run away, thinking that it was his fault. He got as far as, like, the cellar under the house. Oh. And Edgar got his son out of the cellar, sat him down on the front porch, and had a heart-to-heart, and explained to him how it was not his fault. Probably a very endearing moment and eye-opening for Cayce, for Edgar. Very eye-opening. He has been bouncing around, folks, and he's been working hard. See, he really, really wants to be successful at the photography business. Edgar wanted to be more known for his photography than ever for his readings. Torn between the two, and also having that feeling because he had failed, quote unquote, in his mind years before when Gertrude and him first got married and he didn't have any work. And that's why he ran away down to Alabama, Mississippi, Texas to do school of photography there. Find himself is because of that. He felt like he was failing her as a husband, failing his son. Well, my goodness, he hasn't been attentive enough to even notice that his baby was getting that sick and Gertrude's that sick. Here's the thing, folks. Gertrude was actually truly very sick. She also had contracted tuberculosis. So those who have been here with us, doing these biographies with us, Gertrude at some point had left and took care of her brother who had tuberculosis. Cayce did a reading for that brother. It was too late. Sometimes readings can be too late. She contracted tuberculosis during that time. So This is what was really going on. She was pregnant with tuberculosis, delivers a baby who is probably very sick. So is Gertrude. That baby's not growing, that baby's not getting any better because now it's getting 0 nutrients, being allergic to the mother's milk. By the time they replaced the milk with another woman, by the time Casey does a reading, by the time all this stuff is going on, the baby does end up passing away. Gertrude gets sicker and sicker and sicker. Okay? So, baby's born at the end of March. Baby passes away on the 17th. By June 10th, was unable to do any work around, and by July, she was throwing up blood. We all know that that was the tuberculosis. She finally gets diagnosed with tuberculosis. So you would think that she would just have her husband do a reading. What do we do? How do we heal Gertrude, right? You would think that she would allow it. Gertrude never asked Casey for a reading, nor was she allowing it. And here at Stars of Morning Light, we also learn a lot about how the Akashic works. And we learn a lot about um, how the dynamics with all this works. With readings, everything is based on permission. So if Gertrude's not giving the permission, Edgar can go through a million different trances. Doesn't mean he's going to be able to find out how to help his wife. She has to give permission. So I'm going to read you a little bit. I see that John Price came in. Good to see you, my dear. This time, the problem with doing a reading was not Edgar, but Gertrude. She didn't want one. In fact, she had been the only person in the immediate family who was opposed to ever having one, his own wife. It wasn't that she didn't believe he could use his psychic powers to help her, for this had been proven to her in the case of her nephew Tommy. Gertrude was reluctant to ask for a reading because she still didn't like the business of him giving readings and didn't want their lives to revolve around them. Well-meaning but uninformed friends had also told her that Edgar would eventually become insane if he continued giving readings. And there was always suspicious people around Edgar with various get rich quick schemes, including, in her opinion, catch 'em and know. Her steadfast refusal to have a reading was her way of asserting what little control she did have over the situation. Oh my goodness. What a what a very proud woman Gertrude is, but I get it. If you've been here, you know she didn't really like No, the hotel owner, Mr. No, and Ketchum. She didn't like any of these people around Casey. She didn't like Casey doing the readings. Not because they didn't help, but because he was a different man. She loved the photographer. She loved the God-fearing Edgar. She loved the sweet, gentle Edgar, not the psychic. Also, as it just said, people kind of in their circle wanted to tell her that if he continues to do readings, he's going to go crazy. Well, that's horrible to think about, right? You don't want your husband going crazy. And how would they know? They don't know anything about what's going on with Edgar. How they don't even know what the Akashic Records is. But because of the unknown, you're going to kind of listen to everything. And there were, and there we're headed into it, folks. There was a constant kind of stream of people coming into Edgar's life with get rich quick schemes constantly. That is not of their value system, of Gertrude and Edgar, the person, her husband, the father of her son. So she was exercising her free will, her bit of control, her knowing that Edgar needed permission from her to even do a reading to save his wife. She knew what she was doing. She was making a point. She was making a point. So one night, as they're laying in bed, as couples do, Edgar pleaded to her. It was one of those tender, intimate pillow talks that couples have. He pleaded to her and helped her to try to understand that, yes, he's been working out a lot of kinks. This is all kinda new to him as well. He does believe he's doing good work, God's work. He's saving people. He just knows that he needs to be a bit more on his toes and a bit more, in control of those around him and what happens around him within the work. They're having that very sincere conversation of him pleading with her to let him do a reading, him also probably apologizing profusely in many ways, and then pleading, "Please let me do this because I love you, I wanna save you," right? And promising that the reading he does for Gertrude will only be through the energy of prayer. We've never heard this part before. I will read. Knowing that the best and most productive readings were given in a prayerful atmosphere, Edgar assembled the family's loved ones into his office and asked particularly everyone else he knew to pray for him and Gertrude too. Specifically, at the time the reading was to take place. So they went to his office. The usuals are not around. The usual suspects are not there. This is family. This is loved ones. These are ones that will pray. And then he went around and asked the congregation, those who he know will pray. It has to be in an atmosphere of prayer. And these are the conditions that Gertrude agreed to. Gertrude's mother, Lizzie, and Carrie House agreed to be at Edgar's side when he went into the trance. Accompanying them was Dr. Cayce, the Methodist minister who had known Gertrude since birth, and Henry D. Smith, the minister from the First Christian Church who had married Edgar and Gertrude. Their congregations, geez, like Edgar's friends, had all been notified as to when they should begin praying. Edgar had also invited a tuberculosis specialist from Louisville to join them for the reading. So he gets all these people in, some doctors, some drug uh, pharmacists, what we call pharmacists right now. He gets these people together, and now he's got tons of people praying. At the time of the reading starts. That reading, just about Gertrude, went on for like 45 minutes straight. They detailed everything about her body, organs, everything. And then it went into, what do you do about this? And this is the fascinating part. First, with like the tuberculosis, it was to, I think they actually gave the same one for her brother as well. This treatment consisted of inhaling fumes of apple brandy from a charred oak keg. So, a charred oak keg, fumes, so hot apple brandy, you're standing over the keg, breathing in the fumes. This was to clear out the tuberculosis and all the congestion in the lungs, to clear out the lungs. We know what is going on here in today's world. We know what that all is. Back then they didn't. Now from her oh, sorry folks, let me take a pause. To get her over sicknesses that she developed from ha- birthing Milton that she never recovered. They told the people in that room to create what we know now as dissolvable capsules. That had never been done. So it was kind of a mixture of a small amounts of a mixture of different compounds. One of them was heroin. I mean, there was like different compounds. And she was supposed to take these capsules. This is the interesting part. So mix up all a pellet or capsule made from crystallized sulfates of soda, right? Like the old soda machines, crystallized sulfates of soda. Make these little pellets, these little capsules. Mhm. And isn't it interesting, like, in today's world, I don't even know what that's made of anymore. Crystallized phosphates of soda. I guess they go bad kind of fast because they said they were they were only to prepare enough medication for 3 days. For the reading said that the compound would begin to disintegrate after that. Okay. This is back when pharmacists they were taking all the different medicines, different herbs, different chemicals, different all sorts of stuff, the compounds. This is when we get compound medications, right? It used to be pharmacists were way more skilled. There, it was a wonderful career. Never heard before though putting them in a capsule. So here's the problem, okay? Here's the problem. You still need a doctor to write the at least write the script for the different compounds. All the different materials are needed. A doctor needs to write a script for that. A pharmacist, a druggist is what it was. They need to then fulfill all those or put them all together in a capsule. So, there was a moment that the doctors that he invited, they were cool with the charred oak keg of hot apple brandy being used because it had already worked because it was what Edgar read for others with tuberculosis. They know that it worked. Hmm, this whole new capsule thing. They were not sure. And some of the stuff that was being put together, they definitely were not sure about. So those in the room were not willing to do it. Well, then he had to actually hunt down Ketchum, who was not in that room because Gertrude was like, I don't want that guy around. Ketchum wrote the prescriptions for it. Ketchum went to a drugstore, got him from the pharmacist, and he created the compounds, the pellets, the capsules to slow release within her. He did all that. Yes. Okay. Well, Here's the thing, it worked. Now, did Gertrude need quite a while to recover? Yes. She had probably been holding on to tuberculosis for a very long time. She gave birth, lost a child, had not stopped bleeding. Gertrude was extremely sick. Eventually, eventually, yes, she's back on the mend. At that time of like she's mending. Well, let's read. Let's read, everybody. After taking the first capsule, Gertrude stopped hemorrhaging. The fumes of the apple brandy in the charred oak keg reduced the congestion in her lungs. Within a few days, her fever broke, and within 2 weeks, she was decidedly on the mend. But it wasn't just the medication or therapy. Gertrude truly desired to get well and had summoned her strength and courage to come to terms with the readings and her husband's unusual career. Perhaps Gertrude could now sympathize with those who were ill and their families, and the enormous gift Edgar's work could be to them. And perhaps she also understood more fully the sense of responsibility Edgar felt in making himself available to those who needed his help. Although Gertrude sometimes had relapses, meaning she would talk some smack about the people in Casey's life and that maybe he's working too much. That's what they mean about relapses, not so much the sickness. She made great strides forward. Gradually, she gained strength, and within several months, she was back to her feet. And it goes on to talk about how much of it was because of that resolve that she gave herself. So the relapses is medically, but also emotionally, right? How it's all tied in. Edgar worked. He worked hard, and it was because of what was just read about. He felt so responsible for people because he had this gift. And the turn of century, lots of sick people, right? Lots and lots of sick people. She, though, coming to terms with that, accepting it, freed her from what was very long standing inner turmoil, inner pain. That, yeah, did she have her lapses in not liking people around Edgar? Yes. Wanting to spend more time with them? Yes. Also, did she have her lapses in frailty, getting sick? Yes. Well, she had gone through a lot. But within that acceptance and freeing herself from it really, truly changed things up. So while all this is going on, she's on a mend. Edgar's spending more time with his son, Hugh, spending more time notice noticing what's going on with his family. They moved again during this time, by the way. Um, they weren't living in the hill anymore. They had moved to one of the family's homes, right? One of Gertrude's family's homes. Ketchum ended up being under investigation. He is a licensed doctor. Ketchum is originally what they call a Yankee. He is from the North, but then he was down in Alabama, and that's where they all met. Then from Alabama, he followed Cayce up to Kentucky. So, what I will tell you, beloveds, I am a Yankee who transplanted to the South. Yeah, I will always be seen as a Yankee. There is a difference, and I'm okay with that. It took me 3 years to go through hellish ordeals within myself to understand the great differences within culture. There was a great deal of them when I first came down. Very painful for me because I very much was in my northern will mindset, agitator, didn't even know that I was. Um, I took 3 years on the onset of moving here to learn the ways, to assimilate to where I now live, opposed to coming in and dictating how others should live. Ketchum is still an outsider. That's the point I'm trying to get to. In the South back then, and still kind of in today, because there are such vast cultural differences in communication, in time management, in all sorts of things. Ketchum was looked at as an outsider. So he's under investigation by the Christian County Doctors Association. They want to take away his license. That is the county that he lives in Hopkinsville, working alongside Casey. And no, they want to take away his license. Oh, yeah. And you wonder if it's because he is so willing. Ketchum is the one doctor who is willing to do exactly what the Akashic tells him to do. Put a huge screw in the kneecap of your fellow man. First implant surgery ever performed. Ketchum did that. Make these dissolvable capsules fixed with different milligrams of all sorts of things into this capsule that will disintegrate. Never been done before. Ketchum was willing to do it. So, of course, of course, they wanted to take away his license. So there was a meeting. I mean, you're allowed to defend yourself for the most part, right? Well, before this big meeting was taking place, I'm trying to see if I can find exactly how many men were there. It was somewhere between like 40 to 80 doctors in this association because it encompassed a great deal of area. And hold on to that because then he then had to go towards the lawyers. So he- before he goes to this meeting in pure, lovely Yankee fashion, he went to the bank and he took out $1,000 and he divided those $1,000 into two $500 bills. I don't even know if $500 bills exist anymore. I don't know if they do, but they used to exist, beautiful beings. If you're new to this planet, 30 and younger maybe, they did used to exist. So he has two $500 crisp bills in his pocket. And he walks into it was held in the courtroom, but it wasn't like full on court. But he did have to present. He did have to, state his case as to why his license should not be revoked. And all the men are standing around, sitting around, talking, da, da, da. What he walks in, I don't even know if he was asked to speak yet. Maybe he did. Maybe he waited. Probably waited in the back, knowing why he was going to be there. He walks through the sea of men, stands at this podium to address all of them. And before he even talks, he takes out these $205 or these two $500 bills and places both, shows them both sides, hey, puts them down on the podium in front of him. And this is what he said. I am sorry to have brought this on the doctors of Christian County, but you were born and raised here, and I came here. on the encouragement of quite a number of your top citizens, in particular, Professor Dentry, which Edgar saved that boy's his son. They saved that professor's son. And when he told me about this boy Casey, all I did was investigate him. And that's all I'm still doing now. If you gentlemen want to get the real meat of the bull, I want your help. Of course, if you're just going to kick me out of the profession, that's different. But I have a suggestion to offer you. I'd like you to appoint 6 men to choose one of his most complex cases. So he's talking about Casey because he knows this is really all about Casey. Casey doing the spiritual woo woo witchy stuff. To choose, so appoint 6 men to choose one of his most complex cases, then have Casey lie down and go to sleep and diagnose each of the 6 cases. So 6 of your probably top doctors out of all of you in this room, you get to choose. 6 men, pick the most complicated case you've got. Let Casey do a reading. And he ends it with this. This is great. If the diagnoses are not absolutely correct, I will I will release my license. I'll go. But if it is correct, or wait, sorry, if they're not correct. So if they're absolutely not correct, he said he will donate that money, that $1,000, to whatever charity they all choose in Christian County. That's $1,000. That's a lot of money at that time. But if he is absolutely correct, not if he is absolutely correct, then you leave us alone. Now, here's the thing, beloveds. That is a Yankee move like no other. He went in there so strong. He went in there with flash and money. He went in there and said, challenge me, challenge Casey. And don't even just challenge me. Because if I'm wrong, I'm going to give to you. I'm going to give you, I'm doing the right thing here. I'm doing the right thing. I'm going to give you this money if you can prove me wrong. And if you can't prove me wrong, well, then you leave me alone. He came in there with such cojones, as they used to say, right? He came in there, because why I say this is that you do not do that. In the South, especially in 1911, as a Yankee, you do not know that you do as you're told. You do as you follow, you follow. Um, you plead with them, usually in some deep, like Christian way of forgiveness and repentance. No, that Yankee came in and said, here, I'll give you money if you want to come at me. I bet you're not going to win. Guess what? Absolutely none of them spoke to him ever again. They never even tried to choose the 6. They never even chose the 6 guys and come up with the hardest cases they could come up with. Never even spoke to Edgar or catch him again. And I mean, what balls he had. I gotta say. I mean, that is not how things operated. So just the sheer um shock, just the sheer shock, and him not groveling about keeping his license had to have thrown them off completely. That they just don't ever talk to him again. I find that hilarious. I really do because, well, I had a lot of learning on my part. Because here's the difference. In the North, That is how you would have conduct business. It would have been some kind of, well, we're gonna make this a duel. We're gonna make this a bet. I'm gonna probably threaten you in some way, shape, or form, undermine you. I'm gonna probably throw some money in the pot, and I'm gonna start spinning all this stuff, hence where we started, the Windy City, that sort of thing. They were not used to that, I can almost guarantee you. Not used to it. So, at the same time, just after this, Ketchum then goes to a assembly of lawyers that was a mix of, um, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Indiana, kinda all where those states meet, and the, attorney general was gonna be there. This was a conference for lawyers. Somehow, no one really knows, but it was probably Ketchum, got Casey on one of the presentations. Casey presented, and the Attorney General of Kentucky, who was not there in Christian County when he was he was, I can't even talk. Whew, sorry. When he was coming at the other doctors, the Attorney General was not there. The Attorney General was there for the assembly of lawyers from all these different states, from the 3 different states. He That attorney general witnessed what Edgar Cayce could do, and he said something along the lines. He went up to Ketchum, and he said, "Hey, there's a whole lot of things that are near and far. That man there falls away from all of them." Those were his words. Ketchum understood it enough to say something along of the lines of, he falls away from everything. Like, he is not of us. He is not a part of any of this. What he's doing is something very unique, very special. It is not of this world. With that being said, that means that he got the Attorney General of Kentucky, Ketchum did, on his side. After he was just battling it out with all the doctors in Christian County, Kentucky, where Hopkinsville is. So that man, Ketchum, interesting sort. Because even later in life, he admits that, he's done some dirty deals to get what he wanted. But at the same time, he was doing such good work along with Casey because he did have the fortitude and the acceptance of whatever this is to learn and try and experience and do and heal these people. So this is kind of, we take people for who they are. So is Ketchum like the best guy? No. And he'll tell you that. Has he done some shady stuff? Yeah. But was he the one doctor that never questioned the Akashic? Pretty much. So we got to give him kudos for that. Or we would not be anywhere. Zero. We would not be anywhere where we are in the medical science field of today if it wasn't for the willingness of Dr. Ketchum. Right? So Gertrude is still on the mend, and they have moved now into one of the family's homes on Gertrude's side. And one night, knock, knock, knock on the door, knock, knock, knock. There is a Dr. Munzenberg, professor. He is a professor of Harvard psychology, Professor Munzberg. Out of nowhere, didn't send any post voicemail telling him he was coming. He just he heard about Casey through the Chicago wind. Then he investigated what was going on in Kentucky. Then he decided to go to Kentucky from Harvard, professor of psychology. So we're not even talking about medical right now. We're not talking about medical flesh and bone. We're talking psychology, what's going on with the brain. Who is this cat who's talking to something somewhere else and coming up with miracles and salvations of cures? Who is this? What's going on? Big German guy with still a German accent, so probably fresh off the boat or German American. Big 6 foot, 250-pound guy. All of a sudden, knock, knock, knock at the night, just after dinner. Knock, knock, knock. Edgar answers the door. Edgar answers the door. Okay, who are you? And how do you know where I live? And what's going on? Dr. Professor Munsford or Munzenberg introduces himself. Edgar lets him in, kind of like the foyer. And the professor starts going, "Well, can you just show me where your crystal balls are at? Can you show me uh where all your stuff is?" I want to see if I have it quoted correctly. He asked where all of his things were, right? All of his toys, all of his trinkets. It was quite funny. As we take a pause. Here we go. Oh, and by the way, he came for a week-long visit. Who shows up and stays for a week long? They did back then. Edgar and Gertrude were living at Gertrude's mother's cottage, adjacent to the hill. Okay, so they're in the cottage. Munzenberg knocked on the door, introduced himself to Edgar, and then immediately asked to see the cabinet, the lights, crystal ball, or any of the toys, right? Because he's thinking those were trademarks of psychics such as Madame Blavatsky, which for a lot of psychics, it is. That is their divination tools. Those who do the Akashic, they don't need tools. So it threw Edgar way off. Beloveds, please understand, he doesn't know who Madame Blavatsky is. He doesn't really know that there are others all over the states now really kind of acting like they're psychic or doing all this stuff or the spiritualist movement because he's still going to church every day on or every Sunday and probably on Wednesday. He's still just trying to live his life. Edgar didn't know what Munzenberg was talking about. He told the professor that he could go into a trance whether he was lying on the floor in the living room, outside in the yard, or in the middle of the road. He also informed him that many of his readings were recorded by stenographers, that's those who take records, right? Stereographer, and that type of transcripts were available for inspection. So that threw this Harvard professor off immediately. Like, what do you mean? I'm used to like tables rattling, crystal balls, a light peering out of nowhere. He's used to the tricks. And this is a professor of psychology. So he stays a week. He stays a week and observes Edgar. Observes Edgar. So the first one that he observes was actually the next morning. I'm going to read this to you. Edgar's morning appointment arrived at the office. Augustus Bohem had come from his home in Newport, Kentucky, and hadn't told Ketchum or anyone at the office the reason for the reading he was requesting. Edgar and Bohem chatted for only a few moments before Edgar laid down on the couch, put himself into a trance, and proceeded to giving a reading. Leslie stood beside the couch, and Ketchum and Bohem sat in chairs, while Munzenberg chose to sit at the door where he could best view the proceedings. Beloveds, I just read two different things to you that I'm hoping you caught. I told you at the beginning, there are sometimes subtleties in the transformation of one's life. And we just read it twice. We just read it twice. Munzenberg says, "Show me all your crystal balls." And Edgar goes, "What are you talking about? I can go into a trance on my living room floor, outside in the yard, out in the street if I need to." The following morning, I'll read it again. I'll read it again. Edgar and Bohem chatted for only a few moments before Edgar laid down on the couch and put himself into a trance. Before, beloveds, before, Edgar didn't think he had any control over what was going on. Edgar before thought somebody else had to put him into a hypnotic induced trance. Hmm. Hmm. We just were notified twice. Probably because there is no definitive moment of that choice Edgar made. We were just told twice of Edgar firmly saying, "I could be laying in the street and do what I do. I don't use crystal balls." And the next morning, he put himself in a trance, even though Ketchum and Leslie, his father, were sitting in the same room, whom had always run the trance sessions before, who had always put Edgar under, quote unquote. Edgar, seemingly at some point, he was in full acceptance. His wife was in full acceptance. And Edgar made a promise. I am going to have more involvement in the operation of what happens to me and to me because it affects my wife. It affects my family. And then all of a sudden, Edgar is putting himself under a trance. Acceptance, promises, commitments made, kind of coming into that maturity of, yes, this is what I do in life, and I'm going to do it for the better, right? I'm going to do it for the greater good, but I better have some kind of say in how things run. I had always told people that as an Akashic reader myself, Akashic Records messenger, however you want to put it, as myself, I put myself under. And I knew Edgar was going to get there. I know Edgar's story. But it really does take that conceding to your inner self of this is who I am and this is how I contribute to the world before you start to take hold and hone and cultivate your gift. Happened with Edgar, but his wife and his family had to go through some stuff before he made that commitment to self and them that this was his gift. And so he needed to have authority over it. Isn't that amazing? I see that Seeker of Truth came in. Good to see you, my dear. Isn't that amazing? And here's the thing, folks. This is why the Akashic will say it. I will say it. Edgar Cayce has said it. Everyone can access the Akashic. Everyone can. It might take some practicing. It might take more knowledge and understanding, experiencing. It might take a whole lot of that. But what it truly takes is accepting that you are greater than you think you are. You do have these abilities because to access the Akashic is actually available to all humans. Acceptance is key. It's beautiful. I love it. So Munzenberg is with him for a week, doing all these case studies, looking. I mean, he's having patients come in, getting ready, get a rating from Casey, following it up with Dr. Ketchum, seeing how these remedies are working. He's watching it, but what he's really watching is not so much the medical. What is going on with Casey? Is this genuine and true and authentic? Where are the lights, the crystal balls, the charade, right? Where is the lies, the deception, the charlatanism? Not present. Not present. Now, did he know what was going on with Casey really? No. But he thought he was going to go down there and debunk Casey. And I have to tell people right now, there's never been a single person who could. There has never been a person who was around Casey who wanted to debunk Casey. No one was ever able to do that. And it was because all of the glamour, all of the glitz, all of the showmanship was not there because his heart was authentic. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. That's how it should be, right? I'm going to read you this. Munzenberg told Edgar that he would hear from him again, but Edgar never did. Although the professor did not take the trouble to write a case study of Edgar Cayce for one of the medical journals or deliver a paper on the subject, he was not ashamed or embarrassed to describe his experiences in Hopkinsville to his colleagues and students at Harvard. Among them, the distinguished Dr. William McDonald, sorry, who would later conduct a study of the readings himself. So this beautiful professor of Harvard psychology honored and upheld Cayce to the point of knowing I should not even write a paper about this because did I experience all this stuff? Did I witness all of this stuff? Yes. Am I able to write about it? Am I able to try to understand what's going on? No, but I am going to brag on him. I'm going to prop him up. I'm going to express everything I witnessed to others to let the world know this is a possibility and that I trust this man and that I see his heart's in it. To them, Munzenberg admitted that he had failed to expose Cayce as a fraud, and after spending a week with him and conducting studies of 3 who had received readings, he became convinced of Cayce's legitimacy. He said that Cayce had an unusual power, but did not elaborate any further. What a wise man. Don't try to explain something you can't explain, especially when it's your first encounter with it. But if it seems legit and real and true to you, don't also just try to debunk it because you can't understand it, right? It's wonderful. With the praise that Munzenberg gave also came some advice, which he shared with Cayce in private. Munzenberg thought that Cayce was running with the wrong bunch, quote unquote. He was referring to No and Ketchum, and perhaps even Edgar's father, Leslie. Munzenberg urged Edgar to continue listening to the voice, quote unquote, as he referred to the source, but to reconsider the company he kept. So beautiful Munzenberg, doctor, professor at Harvard University of Psychology, knowing more about the inner workings of a person's mind and psyche and soul, their habits, their behaviors, their authenticity at that time, met all these people. Leslie, Ketchum, No, Gertrude. He met all these people. He watched and paid attention to the case studies. He came to find that Edgar, there's another private moment that they had that he told Edgar, keep going. You're going to do great things for other people. And then, probably in the same breath, is that private moment of him saying, hey, those people you're running around with, I don't know. I don't know if you can trust them. They're kind of sketchy, right? Pay attention to who you get involved with. And I encourage you to continue to listen to that voice within. From a high professor at Harvard University who didn't understand what was going on with Cayce, but definitely didn't deny it. So we have learned how such great things, stepping into one's own power and authority, can truly come out of not just personal acceptance, but the acceptance of those within our sphere of love. Also, that there will be others out there that even if they don't understand, they can come to trust. They can come to helping you. They can come to at least not knocking you down. And the best thing we can do is to continue to listen to that inner voice. Because that professor knew. Everyone before with Cayce, by the way, so far up to this point, were either let's say family, like Gertrude's family, his family, news reporters wanting to report on him, shady doctors wanting to exploit him, other businessmen wanting to exploit his gifts of, hey, where's the money at? Where's the treasure? What do I invest in? Or lawyers, some kind of attorneys, because a lot of legal stuff, or they usually had the money to try to do even more get quick schemes based on Edgar. So pretty much everyone who had ever come to witness Edgar's gifts were there to debunk him or exploit him. That professor was the first one who said, hey, watch what you're doing with all these people and listen to that inner voice because it'll guide you. Amazing. And it seemingly all happened at the same time that Edgar stood in his authority. Excellent. Excellent, excellent. So, beloveds, we will return to his bio again. And Edgar Cayce on reincarnation. Stick with Stars of the Morning Light, please. This summer, we're headed into what's going on with the sun, the great SUN, on Friday mornings, every other Friday, and more of Edgar Cayce on reincarnation and what's his predictions. What's going on? Because we're headed into his predictions, right? So please stick with us and listen to that voice within, I can't hurt you. Bye, folks. Love you all stars. Peace.